Did you know that around 1 in 4 men will experience severe domestic abuse during their lifetime? When we talk about domestic violence, we usually picture men hurting women. But what happens when the victim is the father? In today's episode, I sit down with Jason Accashian, a domestic abuse survivor, father of 3, and advocate for men's mental health. Jason shares his personal story of surviving years of emotional, physical abuse, fighting to stay alive for his children, and rebuilding his life from the ground up. This is a difficult conversation, but it's an important one because abuse has no gender. And just like kids, every parent deserves to feel safe. Before we jump in, if you're enjoying the Better Dads Club podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, and share the podcast. It genuinely helps us reach more dads and families who need these conversations. And if you'd like to stay up to date with new episodes and upcoming events and exclusive offers for the Better Dads Club community, head over to our website and sign up for our newsletter. Now, here's my conversation with Jason Accashian. With Jason, good evening to you, good morning to me, or however, I'm in Wellington and it is wintertime, so it is my morning and it is your evening in the US. So it both looks like we're in the middle of the day, which is good. The sun is shining and it's a beautiful blessing for us to connect, man. I'm really excited to have you on today, man, and sharing your story around what you've been through and telling one of the darker aspects and maybe one of the overlooked pieces of relationships that society doesn't really talk about. And so I really want to thank you for your bravery in getting these messages out. And I know you've been doing your bit around your community and talking about this and helping other men see some light from this too. So let's just kick it off, man. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit and maybe a little bit of background on you, where you've come from, and then we can kind of get into a bit more of the story.
Okay. I'm Jason. I have 3 kids, 21, 22, and 24. Was raised by a single mom and my grandparents. My dad left whenever I was 1, and I really didn't reconnect with him until after his mom, my grandmother, passed away. I was about 21 years old. We had an off and on relationship, but it never stuck. It wasn't the type of relationship that a young boy needed. I am a survivor of domestic violence at the hands of a female. I went through a very messy divorce from my abuser, which showed me a lot of the inner workings of the male side of things when it comes to just fighting for your children, fighting for your life. It's been a few years pretty sick. I was in and out of the hospital. Unknown to me, I had carbon monoxide poisoning from a workplace incident. So for 2 years, I was kind of a medical mystery. I had to learn how to walk again, talk again. I developed some lesions on my brain. I would stutter. So I spent about 2 years going through medical treatments and physical therapies to be able to gain some of my functions back. And then on top of that, I used to be almost 300 pounds, and I took the time to lose. I've lost about 120 pounds. I'm in the best shape of my life, and just currently got engaged back in November to an amazing woman, and then we decided to move to the beach. So life has come full circle, and I could not be happier.
Fantastic, man. I'm glad to hear you've landed in a safe, healthy space, especially given what you've been through. So let's start with your upbringing, if you wouldn't mind. Growing up without a dad, that's one of the key things with Better Dads Club is about helping dads be better role models. I mean, I grew up with a father who was there, he was present in the house, but emotionally unavailable, didn't really pay any attention to me, and possibly would have been better had he just actually not been there in the first instance, in terms of the impressions that were left upon me and the way that I developed and the personality and the traits and the desire for validation and the seeking of all of these other things that grew because of that, because I wasn't actually getting that from a dad. How was that for you? Was your mum able to find other male role models around in your community for you to learn from and to be around as well? Or was it purely just your mum and grandparents?
So, my grandfather was really the role model that I had growing up. He was gentle, but he was in the military, he was in the war, and he was one of those old school guys that really didn't express his feelings very much. But when he did, you paid attention. He was emotional when need be, so it gave me that ability to understand that being emotion is not necessarily a weakness. My father, my biological father, he was a football coach. And so he was that hard nosed, you don't cry, you don't complain. And so it wasn't a comfortable area for me to express any type of feelings. My mom did get remarried. She married my stepdad, but of course he was in the Navy. Again, military man. He was gone for 6-8 months at a time. He's a quiet guy, and he always treated me just like he did, my stepbrothers and sisters. He always treated me the same, and I respected him, appreciate him, and love him for that. But he didn't really express any emotions or feelings as well. Just a super quiet individual. Really, it was my mom allowed me the ability to feel, to express my feelings. When I was about 12, I really was having a hard time. I wanted to go live with my dad and try to kind of build that relationship. And it didn't go well. And when I ended up having to go to counseling, I was just so angry at my dad. I didn't understand why he was giving his attention to literally hundreds of other kids, whether they're, because he was part of a school football coach, and he's given his attention and his time and his energy, and he's listening to the troubles of all these people, except me. And I didn't really understand how to navigate that. And the way that I dealt with it was I got angry and I started talking about self-harm, harming him. And so my mom had just said, look, we can't do this. And so she encouraged me, and she would take me to counseling. And I look back at those counseling times as just some really quality time with my mom. She would take me to counseling. After counseling, we'd always go to dinner. And, as a 12-year-old, just looking for acceptance and just trying to figure out some of this madness that I was going through, she really kind of gave me this comfortable space that I could talk about things. She always just encouraged, my sense of humor, and just her being there to listen, just feeling like she was doing the best that she could, and I was doing the best that I could. And there was just this kind of understanding between the two of us that as long as we didn't let each other fall, we were going to make it through. I mean, looking back now as a parent, I can only imagine the sleepless nights that she had worrying about her son, just from a mental and emotional, and worrying, is he gonna be here tomorrow? Is he going to, is he gonna do something that he can't come back from? And I didn't recognize that struggle, in her until I had my own children and listening to them go through their issues. I definitely have a much more respect for my mom, and she did, because you got to think, I mean, I'm 52. This was in the 80s. So this, the whole mental health aspect really was not what it was back then like it is now. And, taking a 13-year-old to counseling, and most of the time people are going to look at you like that kid's crazy. It wasn't crazy. I was just hurting. I was confused. I didn't know how to process some of these things. But I think it was just a combination of my mom just always keeping things light and a good sense of humor in the grandmother and my grandfather. The three of them are just, they hold a very special place in my heart, because if it wasn't for them, I definitely would not be the person that I am today.
Going back to the relationship with your dad, have you had an opportunity to discuss that with him at all? Have you had an opportunity to find out from your dad what his reasons were, or what his thinking was, or even you having a deeper understanding yourself as to why he behaved the way he did in reflection?
Little bit. We have had conversations, but they have definitely not been to the depths that they really probably should be and need to be. He's in his 80s. His health is starting to fail, and I feel that maybe that time has passed, just from his ability to reflect on things as clear as maybe he could have 10, 15, 20 years ago. We have had some conversations. I will say that I can see the impact that he had on hundreds of kids, not only on the football field, but he opened up a school for troubled kids. So over here in the United States, if a kid can't make it in public school, they'll send him to like an alternative school. So he worked there. He was the principal there. He basically started it and ran it. He was a football coach. So he impacted the lives of countless kids. As a child, as a youngster, it was difficult for me to rationalize that. But as an adult, looking back, I realized that I had several people in my life that were going to keep me up. It did not have to be my biological father. But the kids that he was working with, they didn't have 3 people, 4 people like I did to hold them up. My dad may have been the only one that they had in their life. So looking back as a 50-year-old, sometimes I realized maybe I had to sacrifice him to allow him to make an impact on hundreds of youth in the area. It's easier to understand that now. I don't get as upset about it because I've realized that through conversations with him, being out with him and seeing kids that went through his program or football players that played for him come back and speak on how he changed their lives for the better. It's kind of hard to look back at those years in the same mindset that I did when I was younger. I have a little clearer of a picture and just have to understand that I had to sacrifice the father that I wanted for him to be the leader and the support that a lot of children in the area needed.
Hey guys, did you know that doing more core exercises doesn't necessarily mean you're building a stronger core? In fact, many people jump straight into planks, crunches, and other abdominal exercises before they've learned how to activate the deep muscles that stabilize the spine and the pelvis. Those exercises might give you a burn. They might even build stronger looking six-pack muscles. But if your deep stabilizing muscles aren't switching on first, your body can develop compensation patterns that reduce efficiency and in many people contribute to ongoing aches, discomfort, or lower back problems, especially as we get older. Your core isn't just there to make your abs look good. It's the foundation for literally every movement you make. Walking, running, lifting, playing with your kids, even standing up from a chair. I've been a personal trainer for over 17 years, and since I started working alongside physiotherapists early in my career, I've used one simple tool to assess and train these deep stabilizing muscles, and it's called the Pelvic Pro Core Trainer. The Core Trainer gives you immediate visual feedback so you can actually see whether your deep core muscles are working properly. And that means you're not guessing. You're learning how to activate the muscles that help support your spine before you move. It's something I use myself and I prescribe to every client I work with because I believe that how you move is more important than what you move. And when your foundations are solid, everything else becomes easier. You move with more confidence, you reduce unnecessary compensation, and you're building strength on top of a foundation that's designed to support you for life. So if you're serious about moving better, reducing back pain, improving your performance, or simply being able to keep up with your kids without your body holding you back, then click the link around this video and check out the Pelvic Pro Core Trainer. It might just change the way you think about core training forever.
How do you think that experience of your father impacted the way you wanted to be a parent and the way that you approached parenting?
100% did. Because my father, unfortunately, my stepdad was in the home, but again, he didn't take us out in the yard and play ball, or he grew up on a farm. He taught me hard work, and I appreciate that. But to be the father that I wanted to be, I was winging it for a while. I didn't have a clue. I just knew that I wanted to be more than what I had. I wanted my children to know that, one, I love them without a shadow of a doubt, because I went to bed many nights wondering why my own father didn't love me. I'm not saying he didn't love me, it's just how I felt. And I don't want my children to feel that way. So I was extremely affectionate towards them. I was always telling them I love them every night before bed. I'm telling, when I was hurting, I wanted them to know that it was okay to feel these things that were going on inside, especially during the domestic violence. I wanted them to know that all of the things that I was going through, all of the things that I was feeling, the depression and the anxiety and the sadness, it was not them. I mean, I remember one night I kind of snapped at my kids and sent them to bed. And I don't know, it was maybe 11 o'clock at night. It was just eating at me and eating at me. And like, this is not the man that I want to be. This is not how I want them to remember me. And I remember going into their room and waking them up and apologizing to them and letting them know that the way that I came at them, the way that I yelled, that was just not who I wanted to be. And I think just being able to show them faults, show them that mistakes are going to happen. I'm not always going to represent myself in the way that I want to, but when I don't, I want to be able to acknowledge it, and then I want to be able to go to them and acknowledge it with them, because the only way for them to be a 50-year-old man in the future or a 50-year-old woman in the future and have understanding of their own emotions and feelings is if I set that precedent. And so, they've seen me cry, they've seen me broken, they've seen me pick myself up numerous times. And I think that just being able to be everything that I wanted to be the father that I didn't have. And as a 13-year-old, being hurt and confused, I just wanted my dad to give me a hug. I wanted my dad just to say, I love you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're not, maybe we're like oil and water. Maybe, you're a soccer guy. I'm a football guy. Give me something to go on. But I had nothing. I was just going blind. And so I did not want that to be the case with my kids. I was always going to give them a hug. I was always going to tell them that I was proud of them. I was always going to tell them that I love them. And I was always going to show them that I'm going to get up every day. I'm going to go to work. And what I say goes. But I'm also going to let them see me hurting. I'm going to let them see me struggling. I'm going to talk about what I'm going through. So that way, when they are going through something, hopefully they will reciprocate that with me, whether they're 13, 30, 50, it doesn't matter.
What's the relationship that you have now with your kids?
So during all the madness with the domestic violence, there were about 6 months where we didn't see each other much at all. She took the kids, and until we got some things hashed out with custody and etc., I didn't really see them a lot. And I was always present. Like when I was with my kids, we were playing in the yard for 10 hours. We were drinking out of the water hose. Like we had an old school, like I raised them like I was raised.
Yeah.
Like you go outside, you stay outside and play, you drink out the water hose, and you keep going. And I think that they missed that because their mom doesn't have that same interaction. She's more of like, let's go shopping or something like that. She wasn't an outside physical, let's play whatever ball we can play. So during those 6 months when we didn't get to spend a lot of time together, when we did, I kept telling them, guys, unfortunately, this is a fight that you're going to have to win this fight. The only way that we're going to get to be together again the way we want to be is if you speak up, if you express those emotions that I've taught you how to do. And they did. They would go to counselors, they would go to the court people, they would go to their mom and just say, hey, we want more time with dad, we want more time with dad. And once we got our time back, then it was just like a rocket ship. We saw what it was like to not be together. And now when we are, it was like, we're not wasting any time. We're going for gusto every chance we get. And that mentality has stayed. My daughter is 21. She's a senior in college. She has played soccer for the last 3 years in college. She hasn't got a ton of playing time. There's some good girls on that team. But going into her senior year this past summer, or this summer that we're in now, she's been just really grinding. She's hitting the gym. She's getting some personal training. And I even tried talking to her and saying, look, you're not getting a lot of playing time. Maybe you should focus elsewhere. And she always comes to me and goes, Dad, we don't quit. You taught us not to quit.
Yeah.
I said, okay, all right. My youngest boy, he is about as gentle of a soul as you'll find. He is very in touch with his emotions like I am. He's just a kind, gentle old soul. And then my oldest boy, he's just the class clown. And it's kind of funny looking back whenever I was sick, there was a lot of time that I spent that I was not well at all. And when I look back, those same personalities that they have as 21, 22, 24-year-olds, they had them as 5, 6, and 8-year-olds. My baby girl, she was the one that always would make sure that I had some peanut butter and crackers and my medicine and my medicine. Like, she always wanted to take care of me. And she was always there going, let's not quit, let's keep going. My youngest boy, he was that calming kind of energy, just keeping everybody chill, everybody calm. But there were a few times when he had to stand up to my abuser and say, you're not going to do this to my dad. And then my oldest boy, he was the class clown then, and he's the class clown now. He always kept everybody laughing, lighthearted. So those personalities that they developed during some really rocky times have transitioned into to their young adult lives. And it's just been fantastic to see it. And I do take some pride in feeling that I had something to do with it.
It sounds very much like you did. And the fact that they're still there talking with you and you're able to have those conversations and they're able to give you that feedback as well. I love what you just said there in terms of your daughter saying, no, Dad, you told me we don't quit. It's beautiful. You just started talking a little bit about how your youngest son, sort of, there were times where he had to step in and sort of stand up and, to protect you, essentially. And I'd like to inquire a little bit around the domestic abuse, if you could speak to it from your side of things, just so people have a bit of an understanding of what you went through and also what's possible. And I mean, we hear a lot about domestic violence from men to women, especially around moments when there are big sporting events on, for example, and then the team loses and then men go home and then they're taking their frustrations out on their wives and sometimes even their kids. But we don't often hear about, I think we definitely hear a little bit more about the mental and emotional abuse from women to men, but not so much about the physical abuse. But for you, I understand it was a bit of both. But yeah, if you could maybe speak to the abuse and how that was for you, and then also how you were able to get yourself out of it and maintain those relationships with your kids.
Yeah, I always use the analogy, the frog in the boiling water. If you put a frog in a cold pot of water and you slowly raise that water to a boil, he will gradually get accustomed to the temperature of the water until he boils to death. He won't try to escape that boiling water. That's really how a domestic violence, an unhealthy relationship is. It did not start off that way. It started with comments. It started with a little isolation from family. And then it was always, let's push this a little more, see what we can get away with, until you're being told on a regular basis that you're worthless, that, you'll never amount to anything. Then, you start getting the physical abuse kind of in there. Starts with pushes or throwing things at you. And then before you know it, you're getting hit with, pots and pans. It's just a complete and utter just situation of disbelief. I remember I would wake up some days and would still have the marks on me, but could not wrap my brain around what had happened. I remember she would say to me, you're nothing but a worthless piece of shit. And then she would turn to my oldest boy and say, you're just like your dad. Well, how is he supposed to interpret that? If I'm just like my dad, but you just said he was worthless, does that mean, And so I saw him battle some of those questions after he graduated high school, as he was trying to go through college. College just wasn't for him. And realizing that college just wasn't for him, he would revert back to, maybe I'm just not smart. Maybe I'm worthless. Maybe I'll never amount to anything. He was rehashing all of those things because he wasn't doing well in college. Side note, he has a fantastic job right now and he's killing it and I'm so proud of him. College doesn't mean you can't be successful. So
Absolutely not.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
to that myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was difficult to try to navigate the anger that I had at the situation that I was in and not be an angry person. So instead of being an angry person, I just became a sad person. I became a depressed person. I tried to kill myself 3 times. The only reason why I didn't make that final step is my children. They were always what kept me going. They were always what kept me getting up every day. But the one incident that really sticks out is the incident that finally made me go file a report. So as I told you, I was going through some carbon monoxide poisoning at work. I didn't know that it was carbon monoxide. They had a leak that they knew about, but they just never told me. And so during this 2 years of just being sick, I mean, everything that could go wrong with my body was going wrong. And during that time, I was also in an abusive relationship. So there was just 2 years of just complete and utter turmoil. So one day, I'm sitting at the house with my 3 kids, and so we were just sitting on the couch, and she came in, and she wanted to know who folded the towels wrong. Now, I didn't realize there was a wrong way to fold towels, but I said, I folded the towels. And I had my daughter sitting here, my youngest boy was here, my oldest boy was sitting on the couch. And I just feel this fist and it rocked my world. When I kind of regained what's happening here, my youngest boy was pushing her off of me saying, "Don't hit my daddy. Don't hit my daddy." And looking back, that is probably one of the most traumatic things that I've ever experienced in my life. As a father, I'm supposed to be protecting my children. My children are not supposed to be protecting me. So that happened on a Sunday. The following Monday, I had to go to physical therapy, and they asked me how my weekend was. And I just lost it, started crying. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what else to say. They immediately took my statement and sent me over to the battered women's shelter because there are no services, or there were no services for men at the time. I filed my report with the battered women's shelter over there, and then they sent me right back home to my abuser. And a couple of days later, I get a phone call from her. She's panicked. They're doing an investigation. Social services department is coming out to do an investigation. They found probable cause. And about a week after that, she left, took the kids and left. And I don't know if I would have ever left. I know I wanted to leave. I knew it wasn't healthy. I knew looking back, she couldn't have been happy. Her behaviors were exhibiting signs that she was not happy either. But I don't think I would have left. I was so beat down. I was so low that honestly, I would just wake up in the morning and I would just pray that today would be my last day. I knew that I couldn't do it myself. I had tried. I wanted to. There were a multitude of times when I would just be sitting in the bathroom with the razor blade. I couldn't quit on my children. It went against everything that I had tried to instill, everything that I had tried to be for them, getting up every day, going to work, battling the sickness, and then I'm just going to quit. Like that's not the father that I wanted to be. So it's just so weird looking back at how unhappy I was, how unhappy she was, and just thinking to myself, man, if she hadn't left, I don't know how much longer I would have stayed in that relationship. Probably until it exploded to where one of us was really going to get hurt. I knew that I couldn't fight back. She knew that I couldn't fight back because as soon as I did, then now the cops are going to be called on me. And even when I was giving my statement, no one really seemed to believe me. It wasn't until social services came out and interviewed the kids, and all of the kids shared the same stories. I think that's when social services were like, all right, there's something here. But from a domestic violence standpoint, at the battered women's shelter, law enforcement, I didn't get really much credibility in my story. It was only because my kids spoke up that it gave it some legs.
Well, Jason, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your vulnerability and openness there. And I'm sorry that you had to go through that, and that your kids had to witness that as well. I'm sure there are many men that understand that point when there's so much weight on your shoulders and the things that you got to do, and just that sense of, oh, it's just going to be easier if I'm not here. But then at the same time, it's if we do that, and if we take our own exit, then where does that leave the kids? As you said before, we're here to support our kids, and so, with all of the wisdom and the advice and everything that you've instilled with them already in terms of we don't quit, we don't give up. So then if that was to happen, then as you said before, you don't want to be a hypocrite, but that would be probably the most hypocritical action. So
exactly. Yeah.
Just want to acknowledge and just, really proud of you for sticking through it, man. And all of those prayers probably paid off, right? Life has found a way for that to happen.
Yeah.
And while you might not have been the person to actually leave, events occurred that allowed that to take place and for that to happen. And so here we are. And as you say, engaged, living by the beach.
Yeah.
But there's a big time span between this point now where we're at and the time of leaving. So can you talk a little bit about the healing journey? So you mentioned that, there were no services or no support networks for men. In New Zealand, there's an organization called Women's Refuge, whereas for you guys, it's the battered women's shelters, and obviously they probably don't have services for men at any rate, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that journey? And when you were able to step out, what was the first step? And what were those first couple of months or even couple of years like? And then what did you do to shift the trajectory to be where you are now?
So the first and most glaring path that I had to walk was the custody battle. Over here in the United States, for whatever reason, custody always seems to lean heavily in favor of the mom, the women. And so getting drugged through the custody and the child support and just some of the complete insanity that goes along with all that was really eye-opening to me. It showed me that there is a double standard between how men are treated, fathers are treated, and mothers, women are treated, and custody battles, child support battles, things like that. It's a lot of nonsense. Once we got joint custody, there was no child support. We had every other week. Life was moving right along. So then I decided, okay, I need to get better physically. Now, I didn't have my kids for those initial 6 months. Being at the house alone was just torture. I never really understood when somebody would say the silence is deafening. I never understood what that truly meant until I find myself sitting in the same chair that I had sat in with my kids, watching the same cartoons that I had watched with my kids, but my kids aren't there. Not hearing their laughter, not hearing the conversation. That silence was deafening. It was crushing me. It was pushing me farther into a depression. So I decided, okay, I've got to do something. So I said, okay, I'm going to start running. What else am I going to do? I got, the weather's beautiful. And so I would run a little bit more each day until I had this 4-mile loop. My goal was I want to run this 4-mile loop without stopping. And I remember the day that I did it. As I'm coming up back towards my house, I can see it. And I'm just start getting emotional. I have accomplished something. And during this time, I think I had lost, 30 pounds. I was still battling with the unhealthy relationship popping up at my door randomly. And so trying to keep some of that energy out of the house, trying to cleanse my home. And then that negative energy wants to come back in the doorway. And so trying to learn boundaries, not only for, emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, but just energy boundaries. I learned very quickly that if you let some negative energy into your world, it's very difficult to get it out. So trying to just keep that at bay, try to focus on just what I know versus what I've been told. And I would rather take the words of my young children than the words of someone that obviously does not love me in a capacity that I would want. And so just kind of picking myself up and finding healthy relationships again, becoming comfortable with myself and becoming comfortable with my own insecurities, not trying to hide from them when I face them head on, setting boundaries of how I want to be treated. And I had to go through that with my daughter a few years back. She just felt like she could kind of come in my life, go out of my life, talk to me any way she wanted to. And I was taking it for a while, and my beautiful fiance had to sit me down and basically say, the behavior that you allow is the behavior that you're going to get. And I was allowing people to treat me in a way that left me feeling pretty bad. And I had to stop that. And that was a very difficult thing for me to do as a father, to kind of draw that line in the sand and say, you're not going to treat me like this. Now, granted, she was getting some outside influence by people that probably didn't have my best interest in mind, but she was an impressionable high school young lady, and I had to just say, hey, when you come to me, this is the level of respect that, just from I'm your father. You can at least respect me as your father. And so she and I went about 6 months where we didn't really communicate a lot. That was difficult. I would still go to, this was a situation that I ran into. So she wasn't speaking to me, but it was soccer season. And for me, being a father meant being present. Well, how do I navigate supporting her, being present for her soccer games, but also continuing to keep that line in the sand of, you're not going to treat me just any way you want to? So my fiance helped me come up with a plan of, go to the game, but just don't stick around afterwards. Because anytime I would stick around afterwards to see her, I would always get hurt. She would not come over and speak to me. She would ignore me. So I said, okay, I'll just remove that piece of the puzzle. So being able to show up at the games checked off the box of me being there as a father. It allowed me to feel like a good father. I was there to support her, but I didn't stick around for some of the abuse. I hate to use that word. It's a little strong, but it felt that way. And then after several months, she realized that, hey, if I'm going to be, around dad, this is how I have to act. And fast forward 4 years, we have the healthiest relationship that we've ever had. She reaches out to me with all types of crazy, drama and problems, and she calls me almost daily, which is just weird to think, after going 6 months without speaking. So it's just been a journey trying to figure out who I've wanted to be, not only as Jason, but who I want to be as their father moving forward. A few years back, I had the opportunity to take a class on how to be a speaker for domestic violence. And so that had always been something that had been in the back of my mind. Actually, the Domestic Violence Center had pursued me for about 16 years. Once I filed my report, they knew, hey, we got a guy here who might be able to show people that this is not just a one gender situation. But I wasn't mentally and emotionally ready to have this conversation. So a few years ago, when I decided to take the class, I went to my kids and I said, hey, look, I've got this opportunity. Is this gonna be cool with you guys? And all of them were extremely supportive, encouraged me to go do it. I've had the privilege of speaking in live events, several podcasts, and I've just been extremely moved at the responses that I get from my story, not only being a man, but being a white man. It just seems like, for whatever reason, that impacts people. I'm just a guy with a story, but unfortunately, domestic violence is very prevalent in the Black community. So a lot of the events that I've spoken at were majority African American. And so it's very humbling to get done speaking and have people come up to you and just share their story and talk about how much my story has meant to them and lifted them up. I was not expecting or ready for it, but here we are. So we'll keep going.
Keep going. 100%, man. Yeah, it's great to be able to be a pillar for people. And as you said, when you came out of that relationship, there was no support for you. So then now being able to be that support for other people is amazing. What support did you find on your journey over that sort of 15-year period, 16-year period?
Friends and family. I had been isolated from most of my friends, several family members. Even my relationship with my mom was very kind of rocky. But coming out of that, having to, first of all, tell them some of the things that I had gone through, apologize for my role in letting those relationships kind of fall away. But just having a good couple of friends, good family. I remember I had a buddy at the time. I was sitting at the house one night by myself, wallowing in my own self-pity. And he goes, "Hey man, let's go out to this concert." And I said, "Nah, I don't want to go." I had no reason. Just, it felt easier to sit there and just be sad. And he goes, "I already bought your ticket, buddy. You got to go." And I'm a huge Bob Marley fan. Bob Marley has a quote that I live by. He says, "Some people feel the rain, others just get wet." And he said, "Hey, we got Eric Clapton tickets. You're going. Meet me there." And as soon as we walked in to the auditorium, he was already playing, and he was playing his rendition of "I Shot the Sheriff." And I thought to myself, I'm getting emotional thinking about it now. I just thought to myself at the time, okay, this is it. This is when I put 2 feet on the ground and I start my journey. It just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, man. I'm walking in to somewhere that I didn't want to go, and I'm being met face to face with Bob Marley. And it just kind of reinvigorated me. And from that point on, I don't think I stopped. I kept just pushing myself physically, mentally, emotionally, just stopped being scared of my emotions. And there's been several podcasts, there's been several events that I've spoken at that my emotions have gotten the best of me, and I've shed a tear or two. And back in the day, I would have run from those tears, but now I embrace them. And I think that's one thing that really kind of touches people when I tell my story. And I feel like it resonates with people and helps them not be afraid of what they're feeling and acknowledge it. And you got to acknowledge it if you want to address it. So, if you keep ignoring it, it's just going to build up. I talk about, like, it's like trash. We're all carrying around these bags of trash. And at least here in the United States, the trash man comes once a week and empties your trash can. So, I'm carrying around my own trash, my kids' trash, trash that people told me that other people's trash. So, being able to acknowledge that trash, accept that, okay, maybe I need to go to counseling as an adult. So I go to counseling a couple times a year just to kind of empty the trash can. And it's really given me a great insight as to who I currently am, helps me understand where I've come from, and helps me kind of pave the path for where I want to go.
That's great, Jason. That's really good. One of the quotes that I use with my clients is that, what you resist persists. If we're not dealing with
Exactly.
these issues, these underlying things that are actually driving either our behaviors or, for me, when it comes to the physical side of things as well, it's, if we're not looking after our diet and we've got inflammation in our gut, then our core isn't going to be working properly. And a lot of the times that can lead to lower back pain and can actually be a big driver of lower back pain. And you can do all of the exercises that you want to try to strengthen your back. But if you're not fixing up your diet and drinking more water and doing detox things to remove parasites and get our gut microbiome all working together, then, as you say, the trash is still in there impacting the system. And it's the same with the nervous system. What I'm reminded of when you're with your friend and you're sitting there saying, it felt easier to be sad. There's a theory that we live by in the physical rehabilitation space, whereby the law of facilitation. So the more times that a signal is being passed through a series of neurons, then the easier that becomes. So for example, it's, you mentioned around football, right? The more, if you're out there and you're practicing a certain move or a certain technique or skill on the football pitch, if you're learning how to do that incorrectly, you're going to just be programming yourself on how to do it incorrectly. And it takes it's about 10 times as long once you've learned how to do something, or, your way of doing it, that it takes about 10 times as long to unlearn and relearn something new. So to sit and go, well, this is my routine. Same thing happens in the brain. We have negative thoughts that come through because those are the pathways on the neurons that we have. So to sit in that depressed-like state or an immense sadness becomes our mode of operation because that's what our bodies know through habituated patterns, then shifting that can be difficult. So but the funny thing is, the most interesting thing is that the somatic release of these things. So what you've done is a perfect example of how to shift that, getting out not only to, just with a friend and with some connection, but going to a concert where there's other people, there's loud music that's coming in you, that's changing your state. I'm sure you're probably dancing. It's reggae. I mean, reggae is just one of those things that it's moving to anyway, it's going to move through your body. And so that in itself is going to be there to shift and wake up the system. And then this is why a lot of cultures traditionally throughout, eons of human history, they will dance, they will use music, they will beat a drum, they will sing, they will do these things to lift their spirits and to shake the demons out. And then that's essentially kind of what we have. Whereas, we grew up in an era where it's not about dancing and moving the body. You've got a Prozac deficiency. So we're just going to medicate you instead of actually working on the body and going, well, let's release that energy.
When I was sick, because they didn't know what was wrong with me, they were just handing me every medication. Didn't really matter. Like, we're treating the symptoms because we don't know what the underlying cause is. And I got to the point where I'm not taking all of this. I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm going to spend some time with my kids. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And that's just kind of where we're at is, I've realized that it does not take much for me to feel happiness. My fiance can just put her hand on my hand and I'm happy. I instantly feel better. It's just the grounding. I have stressed to my children, you may not make a difference in the world, but you can make a difference in your world. And the only way that you're going to do that is to stay here, be mindful of what you're doing, what you're saying, how you're acting, and all of them are active. They like to cook, they're not out here pumping their bodies full of all these toxins at these fast food restaurants. So even though I may not have known that I was teaching them, looking back, I can see that they've picked up a lot of the better habits that I picked up over the last, say, 10, 12 years. And they've exceeded what I was at their age. And so at that point in time, I guess I just have to consider myself blessed and that I did a good job as a father. I will say that the mental side of things, and you were talking about it takes 10 times to kind of get rid of those bad habits. Even, 16 years removed from my unhealthy relationship, the biggest thing that I still battle is the mental side of things. Once I start going down into the darkness, as I call it, it's very difficult for me to turn it around. It still takes time. So I have to be very cautious. And my better half, she's fantastic. She can recognize when I'm in that dark place probably quicker than I can. I'm a pretty laid back, funny, joking guy. And if the day goes by that I'm not very talkative or I haven't cut a joke or made some stupid random comment, she picks up on that and she's the first one to come to me. She'll grab me, she'll, put my head on her shoulder. She just has this very loving touch that is very grounding and kind of sends me back, to the light a little bit. And then even if I end up wallowing in that darkness for a few days, she never gets frustrated. She understands that it's a process. And so I think that that's really been what has allowed me to elevate to the next level is just having that good person beside me that never makes me feel weak for crying or never makes me feel bad for having a bad day. She says I wake up every day as it's day number 1. So anything that I may have done yesterday, it's irrelevant to today's day 1. And so, because she knows that I carry a lot of who I want to be. And if I don't represent myself like I want to, Then I go into the next day and that darkness kind of continues to snowball. And I start feeling bad for maybe how I acted or didn't act or something I may have said or didn't say. And so she's been very, very great at basically laying down the framework of every day. You got to start every day like it's a new day. What happened yesterday is irrelevant. And just get up and make the best of it.
It's a beautiful philosophy and a beautiful way to live. Obviously, a lot of the time, though, easier said than done, right?
Easier said than done. That's true.
Just got to lift the sheets, jump out of bed, put our boots on, and get out and go for a run. Because once you get the body moving, the mind will catch up. This is one of the 100%. Things that I find as well. But I'm just like you, brother. I find myself slipping into the darkness a lot, and in those moments, I'm like, wait, what am I focusing on? What are the thoughts that are in my head? And as you said before, trying to separate fact from emotion or the things that are true from the things that other people are telling you, and then going, well, actually, what am I focusing on, and what else could I focus on? Here's what's good. Here's all these things that are coming up. I've got bills. I've got all these legal things have popped up, or these accidents have happened, and there's stress coming in over here, or even just, oh man, I don't feel myself today, or I didn't get a good night's sleep, and then going, well, what am I focusing on? What could I focus on? What have I achieved? What's been good? I think, getting a bit of breath, even if you can't get up and go for a run. I totally, not everybody's built for running. But even if you can't, just getting connected with your breath, there's some, other breathing techniques, a little bit of breath work that you can do just to invigorate the body and just to, as I say, put some loud music on and fucking dance, man.
Yeah, that's it.
Just get that going,
Find your happy place. That's my biggest thing is just find your happy place. And I've wanted to live at the beach for 20 years. And a year ago, we just decided, you know what? Let's do it. And to be able to go out and walk the beach in the morning, it's a fantastic way to start the day. You walk out in the backyard and you can feel the breeze, you can smell the salt air, and there's just something very grounding. And it's so funny. People ask me, like, how am I doing? And I'll just say, I got a palm tree in my backyard. Life is pretty damn good.
Better than a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
That's right. Yeah. So, but I do want to address some of the statistics regarding men and mental health situations, domestic violence situations. Men are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than women. Can I express myself without coming across as, looking weak? We are in a very masculine society, which it serves its place, but, we are all human. We all feel things. It's just whether or not we recognize it or not and let go of it. There's 1 in 4 men will experience severe domestic violence. I mean, that's a pretty strong statistic. And in my research and some of the groundwork that I've tried to do over the last few years, there hasn't been a whole lot of improvement in services for men. So as I've walked this journey, one of the things that I've really tried to bring awareness to is that we've got to do better as a society, giving men a safe space to express some of the things that we're going through. Men, for whatever reason, seem to be kind of last on the pecking order of what people care about. We're supposed to get up, we're supposed to go to work, we're supposed to not feel anything, we're supposed to be strong, provide for the family, and if you get hurt, suck it up and move on. And that might work for a period of time, but over time, it's going to be like death by 1,000 cuts. At some point in time, you are going to break, you are going to crumble. And I am a firm believer that this ignoring men's mental and emotional health is why we have such an angry society nowadays. I get it that the man is supposed to be the head of the house, but if the man is not in a good place, the house is not going to be in a good place. If the man is crumbling on the inside, the home is going to be crumbling on the inside. I definitely think that we have to do better. We have to make services. And even now, if you were to go onto the domestic violence website, at the very bottom, it's going to talk about the services, the minimal services for men. It doesn't need to be this gender-specific topic. I think men and women, we all need to do a better job of recognizing the sadness that we come across, the sadness that we feel, because if we ignore it, that's just going to turn into anger. And then we have a situation to where now you're lashing out in anger instead of recognizing some of the sadness that you have and releasing that, man, it'll change your life. It'll have you looking at the world in a different place. Once you stop being sad and angry and confused, you just see things with such clarity, and you realize that loving someone, giving someone love is such a much easier task than walking around in that darkness. And there's a quote by Oscar Wilde that said to have become a deeper man is the privilege of those who have suffered. And I have people all the time that'll say, "I'm sorry you went through that," but I'm not. I'm thankful for every bit of my journey. It allowed me to be the man that I am today, because I can promise you I would not be who I am if it wasn't for all the trials and tribulations that I went through. So I'm thankful for them.
Yeah, and look, and now you get to be that pillar and that beacon for men that are going through that, because it's quite an interesting statistic that you've just mentioned. 1 in 4 men going through domestic violence, 25% of men in relationships going through domestic violence. Like that's a larger number than I would have thought.
Yeah.
So just for the men out there that are going through this, what advice have you got for them?
Don't give up. First of all, you have got to start. You've got to be able to separate that fact from feeling. You might be feeling like you're worthless, but the fact is you're not. You're an intricate part of your life to someone, and so find something to hold on to. Find something to keep you grounded. For me, it was my children, and document. Make sure you document. Somehow, some way, keep a track of some things that had been going on just to protect yourself. Again, as a man, you're not going to be able to retaliate or fight back, but do some digging, do some Googling, and see what services are available in your area, whether they're men's group through churches or through rec centers or whatever it might be. Try to find a group that you can talk to, and just protect yourself. Don't do anything that's going to, the last thing that you want to do is retaliate, because that's just going to give you a whole nother, bundle of problems that you're not going to know how. If you don't know how to deal with the abuse, you're definitely not going to know how to deal with the abuse, and then figuring out how do I get out of this legal situation that I'm in. So try to just spend some time every day focusing on who you are. I used to hate looking at myself in the mirror, because I'd look at myself in the mirror and I would only see the person that I was told that I was. So make sure that you are telling yourself things that you know are true. Even if it's something as simple as, I'm good at my job. Something. You just find something to give you that ground floor that, don't go past this point, because once you go past this point, man, it's a slippery slope in that darkness. So just protect yourself, stay grounded, stay focused, reach out to the people that you have around you, find that one person that you can confide in, and just be willing to lean on someone else. Just because you're a man, just because you have this masculinity, doesn't mean that you can't need someone to help hold you up. That is perfectly okay. I can promise you that if it wasn't for my kids, I would not be here today. If it wasn't for my buddy taking me to that concert and not taking no for an answer. So find someone. Don't be ashamed to acknowledge. Don't be afraid to shed a tear, and just, recognize, lean on those people, and just understand that as long as you get up, you have the opportunity to make it a better day. It's yesterday does not have to determine today, and that's really what you got to live by.
Yeah, awesome. And so if there are men listening, or men that might know men that are in this situation, what would be the first step in terms of ending that relationship or getting out of that situation?
Easier said than done. Like a lot of things, especially if there's children involved, the last thing that you want to do is leave your children in a relationship to where then that violence, that interaction then gets passed down to them. Unfortunately, like I was telling you before, my oldest caught a bit of that whenever I wasn't around. So, as a father, you definitely don't want to leave your children that way. That's when you have to start looking at some legal and professional ways to try to limit the collateral damage that may come from leaving a relationship like that. If you don't have children, run. Run. You got nothing holding you there, man. Just run, buddy. I promise you. There's some good women out there. You do not need to take that nonsense. It makes it a little more tricky when there's children involved. So I would definitely say, talk to someone, try to find, legal or professional, help. And then if if you are that friend that knows someone in that relationship, just always be open, always be listening for some kind of clues. I didn't want someone coming to me going, man, you got to get out of that relationship. I know I did. I know that. I mean, I know these things. Anybody that's in another relationship knows it. They don't know how to get out of it. And I think that's where being able to have someone that you can talk to. So if you are that friend, just be there. Don't push the issue. Just be there, be supportive, and just try to understand that it's not just as easy as a snap of the fingers to get out of it. At the end of the day, this is someone that you used to love, that you have feelings for, and part of it is just you're confused. You're like, how did I get from that to this? And that journey from that to this can be really confusing, and you don't really know how you got there. And so you have to be able to look back and kind of untangle some things before you can move forward. And so just don't get frustrated. I had a buddy that got frustrated, and he and I stopped talking for a while because he was just like, just leave. But for me, it wasn't that easy. So just be patient. And let that person know that you're there anytime that they need you, and just be there ready to listen.
That's great advice. The world could do with a little bit of listening all the time. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, Jason, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate you coming on here, and thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for the advice. And again, like, also really cool to hear that the relationship that you have with your kids has flourished and has deepened in the way that it has, even given the circumstances, and also the way that you were able to show up and be a better dad than your dad was for your kids, and these being the results. So that's a really wonderful journey, man.
It was a concern. I was worried that with all that they had seen, how do I repair some of that damage? And I think it was I tried to just be as real as I could, as vulnerable as I could, and not hide anything from them. If I was struggling, I wanted them to know that I was struggling. And I think it gave them a sense of not only me as a father, but as a man. And I worried about them for a while, but now that they're all young adults and they're thriving and flourishing, it definitely makes me smile when I think about maybe I did a good job. We're dads. We're always going to question whether or not we're a good father. And I have people around me all the time that are saying that I'm the best dad that they've ever known. Just because you say it doesn't mean I believe it. So I'm finally starting to believe that, yeah, you know what? Maybe I'm a pretty good dad. And at the end of the day, I don't think anything else matters more than that.
Yeah, brother, I think you're a great dad, and I would suggest, I would invite you to look, rather than anybody else's success markers or whatever anybody else says, the proof is in the pudding of the relationship. So the fact
Amen.
that your kids are able to talk to you, I mean, you think about, like, as you mentioned at the start, you don't have that relationship with your dad to be able to go and have those conversations. That's missing. Whereas they have that with you, and that's the most important thing. So one of the key takeaways from me is definitely the leading with vulnerability, that willingness to let them see you cry, that willingness to let them know when you fucked up, and owning those mistakes, and then seeking to repair that as soon as possible. I think those are some beautiful points to maintain those relationships even through those turbulent times. So thank you, and keep doing the work that you're doing, bro. So where can people find you if they want to have a conversation with you, if they want to, get in touch?
So I don't do this professionally. I just try to help as I can. You can send me an email at lilthis4850@gmail.com. That's LILTHISLILTHAT 4850@gmail. I have an eBay business, so that's my email address. And then I sent you a link for my Instagram. I don't know if you want to clip that in the
The show notes, yeah.
in the notes, so, you can message me either through email or you can message me on Instagram or Facebook, either one of those. I'm always open to have a discussion, whether on a podcast setting or just, one-on-one if someone just needs some advice. I walked this journey for a reason, and it can't just be for pain and suffering. There has to be some glory at the end of it. So anything I can do to help.
Yeah, that's the way, brother. Send the elevator back down.
That's
All right,
right.
Jason, thank you very much, man. I'll let you go and get your dinner and enjoy
Thank you,
your
my
evening.
friend. Yes, sir.
See you soon.
All right. You have a blessed weekend.
You too, brother.